Hello, my name is Sean Breheny, and I was shocked and saddened by the recent mass shootings in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas. I've been thinking a lot about what can be done to prevent these crimes, and I'm making several short videos on this topic. In this first video, I'd like to focus on the proposal to ban so-called assault weapons and to limit gun magazine capacity. Of course, people intent on evil will always be able to commit murder. But would such legal limitations as are being proposed curtail the number of deaths significantly? As a relatively new gun owner myself, I decided to test the effect which these bans might have on an attacker's ability to kill a large number of people. My test is simple. Use each of several rifles with different magazine capacities to fire 40 aimed shots at a human torso-sized target at 75 feet. I then measured both the total time required as well as the duration of the longest pause between shots as required by the need to reload. Let's see if the difference in total time would significantly change the ability of the attacker to cause harm before the police stopped him. Let's also consider if the time needed for reloading could give people the ability to flee, take cover, or to rush the attacker. I know all of this technical talk can come across as clinical and uncaring in the face of the unspeakable horror of killing innocent, defenseless children or adults. But the fact is that we are talking about enacting laws which will be enforced in a technical way. They're not magic cure-all responses. It's already illegal to commit murder. We're talking about whether additional laws, which always have side effects and consequences for millions of law-abiding gun owners, whether those laws will have enough effect in saving lives to justify these unintended consequences. That discussion must be based on a clear-headed evaluation of the facts, even though it is motivated by a desire to do good coupled with strong emotions. The term assault weapon is not well defined. It is determined more by appearance than by function or lethality. It usually refers to rifles which are copies of or compatible with the original Armalite AR-15. I used my Bushmaster XM-15 as an example of this type of gun. I did 2 tests with it, one using 4 10-round magazines and another using 2 20-round magazines. I also tested a weapon which is very similar in function to the AR-15, but which is never included in discussions of assault weapons in the United States, the M1 Garand. Like the AR-15, it is semi-automatic, meaning that it fires 1 round each time the trigger is pulled, without the need for the user to load the next cartridge manually. It has an 8-round internal magazine loaded by inserting a clip of 8 rounds. The empty clip itself is ejected after all 8 rounds are fired. The Garand was the U.S. Army's standard rifle during both World War II and the Korean War. Mine was made in 1944. Another common rifle which is almost never considered an assault weapon in the United States is the Ruger 1022 .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle. It is commonly used to teach young people target shooting or for hunting small game. I included mine in this series of tests, using both 4 10-round magazines and in another test, a single 50-round magazine loaded with 40 rounds. Finally, I also included a classic bolt-action rifle, which is similar to a typical hunting rifle. It could not be banned without banning hunting with rifles. Mine is a model 1903A3 made by Remington in 1943. This type was used in World War I and to a lesser extent in World War II by the U.S. military. Bolt-action rifles require the shooter to move the bolt by hand to load the next round after each shot. It has a 5-round internal magazine. Let's go straight to a short clip of the testing of each of these 4 weapons and then discuss the results afterwards. Here's an example of one of the targets, in this case from the test with the M1 Garand. Here are the results. The lowly Ruger 1022 is the winner, doing better with 10-round magazines than the AR-15 did even with 20-round ones. This is because the low recoil of the less powerful 22 long rifle rounds requires less time to move the rifle back on target after each shot. The 50-round magazine used in the test with the Ruger 1022 could have done dramatically better, but it had a malfunction, which is common for these larger capacity magazines. The difference between 10 and 20 round magazines for the AR is almost nothing. It comes down to the fact that I did the 10-round magazine test after I did the 20-round one, so I was shooting a bit faster in the later tests because of the additional practice. The old M1 Garand still did the job in less than 2 minutes, and the longest gap was only 12 seconds. And even the bolt-action M1903 took just over 4 minutes and had an average gap of 14 seconds to reload. It took 24 seconds one time because of some difficulty with one of the clips, which are themselves 80 years old. For the sake of completeness, here was the accuracy result. I managed to get all shots fired onto the 12-inch by 18-inch target, except for one round from the 1022 and 4 rounds from the M1903. Often a big deal is made of how powerful the round fired by the AR-15 is. Here is a comparison of the rounds fired by the 4 rifles we just looked at. By far, the most powerful rounds are the .30-06 ones fired by the Garand and the M1903. The AR-15's 5.56 mm round is in the middle, and while traveling a bit faster than the .30-06, it has only half the energy due to being much lighter. The .22 long rifle round fired by the Ruger 1022 is much lower power than either of the other two. These differences could have been inferred by looking at the size of each bullet and of each whole cartridge. In actual fact, all 3 types are very lethal. Despite what the media depicts, the .30-06, which is typical of rounds fired from hunting rifles, causes more severe wounds than the 5.56 mm round fired by the AR. It is true that the AR's round is traveling fastest and tends to tumble on impact, but that only partially makes up for how much smaller and lighter the bullet is. Even the .22 LR fired by the Ruger 1022 has, sadly, been used very effectively in mass shootings, especially the 2016 Cascade Mall shooting, in which 5 people were shot with a Ruger 1022 and all 5 died. So what does all this mean? In my opinion, it shows that any of the 4 rifles tested could be used to commit mass murder of 10 to 20 unarmed people in 4 minutes or less. Plenty of time to commit this evil before police could arrive to stop it, unless one or more police or other armed people were present when the shooting started. A gap of 8 or 12 or 14 seconds to reload is not likely to allow many people to escape. The gap is not usually evident until several seconds after it begins, and the remaining time is not adequate to assess the situation and to decide to either make a run for it or to rush the gunman. It's obvious that the AR-15 does have the overall advantage when it comes to being able to deliver the most rounds of quite high energy within the least amount of time. However, it's not dramatically faster than the old M1 Garand, nor are these higher power rounds needed to kill innocent people who are not wearing any form of body armor. Therefore, in some sense, the Ruger 1022 actually has the edge in the rate of accurate fire. But even the low-tech bolt-action rifle, typically used for hunting, is easily capable of killing many unarmed people before police can stop the gunman. The primary advantages of the AR-15 type rifle are most useful in defensive situations when you're facing someone who's shooting back at you. This is where a gap of 14 seconds versus 6 seconds to reload makes a big difference. This is where a larger magazine capacity can make the difference between life and death, since most shots taken in an actual 2-way gunfight miss, because you don't have enough time to aim carefully when you're exposing yourself to return fire. If I were facing a mass shooter, would I rather that he have an M1903 rather than an AR-15? Of course I would. But is the difference so dramatic that the death toll would be much less when the police finally stopped him? Is the difference so dramatic that it warrants preventing millions of law-abiding gun owners from buying and owning the most popular, most common type of rifle in the US? I really do not think so, and I think we should focus on other methods of reducing or preventing this type of violence.